With her belly swollen from a 7-month pregnancy and a foreclosure notice clutched in her trembling hand, Olivia Chen stared at the imposing facade of the abandoned Millfield Savings and Trust. She had spent her last $500 buying this derelict bank at a county auction, desperate for a place to call home before her baby arrived. Little did she know that behind the massive steel door of the forgotten vault lay dusty military documents that would not only expose America's most classified World War II invasion strategies, but would thrust her into a dangerous battle between government intelligence agencies, wealthy collectors, and the descendants of soldiers whose fates had been sealed by those very plans. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The early April rain drummed against the cracked windows as Olivia followed County Clerk Martin Dawson up the granite steps of what was now her property. Her sensible shoes echoed on the marble floor of the grand lobby, now dulled by decades of neglect. Cobwebs stretched between ornate columns, and the once impressive teller counters were covered in a thick layer of dust. As I mentioned during the auction, the property is being sold as is, Martin said, his voice bouncing off the high ceilings. Millfield Bank closed in 1989 during the savings and loan crisis, and the building has been vacant since then. County seized it for back taxes 15 years ago. Honestly, we're just happy someone's taking it off our hands. Olivia nodded absently, her mind elsewhere. Just 6 months ago, she had been a respected museum conservator with a promising career. At the Metropolitan Historical Society, engaged to fellow historian Daniel Wilson. Then came the unexpected pregnancy, followed by Daniel's equally unexpected disappearance, leaving her with nothing but mounting medical bills and a career derailed by institutional politics. The location isn't terrible, Martin continued, trying to sound encouraging. Downtown Millfield has seen better days, but there's talk of revitalization. The second floor has living quarters where the bank manager used to stay. Might be habitable with some work. And the utilities? Olivia asked, running her hand along a marble countertop. Water and electric are still connected to the grid, though you'll need to set up accounts. The plumbing might need work building. This old always does. He hesitated. Look, I know you got this place for a steal, but are you sure about this? A pregnant woman alone in an old building like this. Olivia straightened her back. I have a PhD in historical preservation. Mr. Dawson, I've restored buildings far older than this one. And in 3 months, I'll have a baby who needs a roof over their head. This is what I can afford. What she didn't say was that her savings had been depleted by medical bills after her. University health insurance had lapsed. The small town of Millfield, 3 hours from her former life in Boston, offered the only housing she could afford. This forgotten building purchased for the price of 1 month's rent in her old apartment. Martin handed her a ring of brass keys. Main entrance, back door, upstairs apartment, and this one. He held up an ornate key with a small tag. Supposedly goes to the vault, though it's been locked since the bank closed. Probably empty, but no one's been able to open it. Previous owners claimed the mechanism was jammed. Olivia took the keys, her trained eye noticing the distinctive Art Deco design of the vault key. Thank you. I can manage from here. Take your time looking around. I have other appointments, so I'll head out. Town hall's open weekdays if you need anything. Martin seemed relieved to leave, the emptiness of the building clearly making him uncomfortable. Alone in what would become both her home and her fresh start, Olivia moved through the cavernous main floor like a curator examining a new exhibit. The teller cages with their brass details. The manager's office with its heavy oak desk still in place. The elaborate plasterwork ceiling, remarkably intact despite years of neglect. Her trained eye saw past the decay to the building's bones, solid, dignified, built to last. She made her way upstairs to the bank manager's apartment, A surprisingly spacious three-room residence with large windows overlooking Millfield's town square. The furniture was gone, but the fixtures remained: a clawfoot tub in the bathroom, a cast-iron sink in the kitchen. With cleaning and minor repairs, it could be livable within days. As she stood by the window, watching rain trace patterns on the glass, Olivia felt her baby kick. She placed her hand on her swollen belly. "We'll make this work," she whispered. "Just you and me." Her phone chimed with an incoming call. The screen showed Boston Metropolitan Historical Society, her former employer. For a moment, hope fluttered in her chest, but she quickly suppressed it. They had made their position clear when she had announced her pregnancy. "Olivia Chen speaking," she answered, keeping her voice professional. "Olivia, it's Harriet Gladwell." The museum director's voice was as crisp as ever. "I'm just checking in. Richards mentioned you'd left Boston. Something about buying property in, where was it?" "Millfield," Olivia supplied. "Yes, I've purchased a building here. I'm standing in it right now." "Millfield? Isn't that where that dreadful savings and loan collapse happened in the 80s? What on earth possessed you to move there?" Olivia didn't mention that her pregnancy, considered an inconvenience by the institution's leadership, had effectively ended her promising career track. Harriet herself had suggested Olivia take time off, rather than embarrass the museum with an unwed, pregnant senior conservator working with important donors. "It's a change of pace," Olivia said neutrally. "The building has historical significance. Early 1920s architecture, remarkably preserved." "Well," Harriet's voice held a note of condescension, "when you're ready to return to serious work, let me know. We could possibly find something for you in the educational department. More suitable for someone with family commitments." After ending the call, Olivia let out a long breath, fighting back tears that threatened to fall. From fast-tracked for a curatorial position to relegated to children's tours, all because she had chosen to keep her baby. As the afternoon light began to fade, Olivia made her way back downstairs. She hadn't yet explored the most intriguing feature of her new property, the bank vault. Following the main lobby to its rear, she found herself facing an imposing circular door of steel and brass, its surface adorned with the same Art Deco patterns as the key. The vault dominated the back wall, a monument to security and prosperity from a bygone era. Unlike the rest of the building, the vault showed no signs of vandalism or tampering. Its massive door remained firmly shut, as it had been for over 30 years. Olivia ran her fingers over the combination dial, appreciating the craftsmanship. As a conservator specializing in early 20th century artifacts, she recognized the manufacturer Mosserler Safe Company, known for building vaults that survived the bombing of Hiroshima. "Let's see if this actually works," she murmured, inserting the ornate key into a small lock beside the main dial. To her surprise, it turned smoothly. The dial, however, remained immovable, locked in place by an unknown combination lost to time. Olivia checked her watch, too late to do anything more today. She would need to bring her belongings from the motel, purchase cleaning supplies, and begin making the apartment habitable. The vault's mysteries would have to wait. That night, lying on an air mattress in what would become her bedroom, Olivia scrolled through her phone, researching Millfield Savings and Trust. Most articles focused on its dramatic collapse in 1989, when the bank president, Walter Griffin, had disappeared with millions in deposits, leaving the institution insolvent. One detail caught her attention. Before becoming a savings and loan in the 1970s, the building had served as the first national bank of Millfield since its construction in 1923. More intriguingly, during World War II, it had been temporarily commandeered by the government as a regional document security facility, owing to its state-of-the-art vault. "Government documents," Olivia whispered to herself. Historical curiosity piqued. If the vault had remained sealed since the bank's closure, Could materials from that era still be inside? Sleep came fitfully that night, her pregnant body uncomfortable. On the air mattress, her mind racing with possibilities. Her dreams were vivid, standing before the vault as its doors slowly swung open, revealing shelves of dusty ledgers and folders marked with military insignia. She woke at dawn, the baby kicking vigorously as if sharing her excitement. After a simple breakfast, Olivia drove to the local hardware store, purchasing cleaning supplies, basic tools, and a book on locksmithing. If the vault held historical artifacts, her conservation training would be essential for their proper handling and preservation. The morning passed in a flurry of cleaning, sweeping decades of dust from the apartment, scrubbing fixtures, wiping windows to let in more light. By afternoon, exhausted but satisfied, Olivia returned her attention to the vault. The book on locksmithing offered little help with a sophisticated bank vault, but it did explain the basic principles. This particular model would have had both a key and a combination. The key she possessed merely enabled the combination dial, which would still need the correct sequence. Think historically, she told herself, applying her researcher's mindset. What combination might the bank have used? Birth dates of founders? The bank's establishment date? She tried several likely combinations with no success. As she worked, an elderly man appeared at the bank's front door, peering through the glass. Olivia opened it cautiously. "Can I help you?" she asked. The man smiled warmly, his face a map of wrinkles. "Name's Howard Finch. Heard someone finally bought the old bank building. Thought I'd welcome you to Millfield." Olivia introduced herself, instinctively liking the old man's genuine manner. "I worked here, you know," Howard said, gazing around. The lobby with misty eyes. 42 years from messenger boy to head teller. Retired just 2 years before everything went belly up in '89. Lucky timing, I suppose. You worked here during the war? Olivia asked, excitement rising. When the government used the building? Howard nodded. I sure did. Started in 1943, just a boy of 16. Too young for fighting, but old enough to work. The Army had taken over the vault very hush-hush. Only the bank president and a few military fellows had access. Do you know what they stored here? Documents of some kind. We weren't supposed to ask questions, wartime security, and all that. But rumors flew. Some said battle plans, others said lists of spies. Howard shrugged. Whatever it was, armed guards watched that vault round the clock until 45. The vault's still locked. Olivia said, I have the key, but not the combination. Howard's eyes widened. You mean to say no one's opened it since the bank closed? Not even the FDIC folks who came after Griffin disappeared. According to the county clerk, the mechanism was jammed. No one could open it, so they eventually just gave up. Howard frowned, thinking, that doesn't make sense. I used that vault daily for decades. Masaru made the best vaults in the world. They don't just jam. Someone must have changed the combination. Do you remember the old combination? Olivia asked hopefully. Been a long time. Howard concentrated. For years it was the bank's founding date, backwards 321905, May 19th, 1923. But Griffin might have changed it. He was paranoid in those final months, acting strangely. Olivia's heart raced. This was exactly the kind of historical detail she needed. Would you mind if I tried it? Together they moved to the vault. Howard watched as Olivia inserted the key and turned it. The dial loosened under her fingers. 3 right, 2 left, 1 right, Howard instructed, recalling the procedure. Olivia turned the dial carefully. 3, 2, right, 1, 9, left 0, 5, right. She held her breath and pulled the handle. Nothing happened. Worth a try. Howard sighed. Griffin must have changed it. As Howard prepared to leave, he paused thoughtfully. You know, there was something odd. Before, Everything fell apart. Griffin was obsessed with military history, especially World War II. Started after he found some old papers in the bank's archives. Kept talking about how history had been written by the victors, and that the real story was still hidden. This piqued Olivia's professional interest. What kind of papers? No idea. But he spent hours in the records room after that. Became secretive, agitated. Within months, the bank collapsed and he vanished. Howard shook his head. Never did find out what happened to him. After Howard left, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about the vault and Griffin's mysterious behavior. Her historian's instinct told her the two were connected. If Griffin had found documents from the war years, documents important enough to trigger his obsession and perhaps his crime, what might still be locked in that vault? That evening, as rain once again battered the windows, Olivia researched Walter Griffin. News articles described him as a pillar of the community before his downfall, church-going, civic-minded, a military history enthusiast who had never served himself due to a childhood illness. No criminal record, no previous scandals. His disappearance, with millions in depositors' money, had shocked everyone who knew him. One detail stood out. Griffin was born on December 7, 1941, the day of the Pearl Harbor attack. This coincidence had apparently fueled his fascination with World War II. Could it be that simple? Olivia murmured. Moving back to the vault, she tried a new combination. The 7th of December 41. The mechanism remained unyielding. Frustrated but not defeated, Olivia spent the next day settling into her new home. A local second-hand store provided basic furniture, a real bed, a table, chairs. She met several neighbors, all curious about the pregnant woman who had bought the old bank. Most were friendly, though some seemed skeptical of her plans to live there. "Place is probably haunted by all those folks who lost their life savings," commented one elderly woman at the grocery store, eyeing Olivia's pregnant belly with concern. "Not sure I'd want to raise a child there." Returning to the bank that afternoon, Olivia was surprised to find a sleek black car parked outside. A man in an expensive suit stood at the entrance, checking his watch impatiently. "Ms. Chen," he called as she approached. "I'm Lawrence Reed, representing Eastern Heritage Development. I understand you've recently acquired this property." Olivia nodded cautiously, unlocking the door. "Just 2 days ago." Reed followed her inside without waiting for an invitation. "Our company specializes in redeveloping historic properties in small towns. We've had our eye on this building for some time, but missed the auction notice. I'm authorized to offer you $75,000, a substantial profit on your investment." The offer was tempting enough to rent a decent apartment for a year, cover medical bills, and provide a financial cushion while she sought work. But something felt off about Reed's eagerness. "I'm not interested in selling," Olivia said firmly. "I've just moved in." Reed's smile tightened. "Perhaps I wasn't clear. This building requires significant renovation to be commercially viable. The cost would far exceed what his eyes flicked to her pregnant belly, "person in your situation could manage. Our offer is quite generous. Nevertheless, I decline." Reed reached into his jacket and produced a business card. "Think it over. Our offer expires in 48 hours. After that, we'll be pursuing other opportunities in Millfield." After he left, Olivia examined his card. Eastern Heritage Development had a Boston address, a connection that seemed unlikely to be coincidental. Why would a Boston developer be interested in an abandoned bank in a struggling small town 3 hours away? That night, unable to sleep, Olivia returned to the vault. Something about Reed's visit had unsettled her. If the building itself was valuable to developers, why had it sat empty for 15 years? What had changed? On impulse, she tried another combination. The date the bank had closed, March 15, 89. The dial turned smoothly. 3 right, 15 left, 89 right. When she pulled the handle, something inside the mechanism shifted. The massive door, silent for decades, groaned as if awakening from a long sleep. Olivia's heart pounded as she pulled harder. Slowly, majestically, the vault door swung open. The smell hit her first: musty paper, old leather, metal. Her conservator's instincts registered the odor of materials long sealed away from light and modern air. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she saw shelves lining the walls, filled with boxes, ledgers, and file folders. And in the center, on a small table, sat a single metal container marked with faded military insignia and a simple label: Operation Coronet Classified, Eyes Only. Olivia's hands trembled as she approached it. Operation Coronet, she recognized the name from her historical studies. It had been the code name for the planned Allied invasion of Tokyo in 1946, the second phase of Operation Downfall, the largest amphibious invasion never executed, rendered unnecessary by Japan's surrender after the atomic bombings. But what were these plans doing in a small-town bank vault in Massachusetts, apparently forgotten for over 70 years? As a historian, Olivia understood the potential significance of her discovery. Operational plans for Downfall had been largely destroyed or permanently classified after the war, with only summaries released to the public. Full tactical details, casualty projections, and strategic assessments remained largely unknown to historians. If these were authentic, they would be of immense historical value, potentially worth millions to collectors or museums, and of incalculable importance to military historians. Carefully, using the conservation techniques ingrained from years of training, Olivia opened the metal container. Inside were dozens of folders containing typewritten reports, hand-drawn maps, and what appeared to be original signed orders from General Douglas MacArthur himself. One document caught her eye: a casualty projection, report stamped Top Secret, and dated July 1945. It estimated American losses for the full Operation Downfall at potentially over 1 million soldiers, with Japanese military and civilian casualties projected at several times that number. "My God," Olivia whispered, understanding the historical implications. These projections far exceeded the publicly acknowledged estimates, suggesting the decision to use atomic weapons had potentially saved millions of lives on both sides. A contentious, historical debate that these documents could help resolve. As she carefully examined the documents, a folded paper fell from between two folders. Unlike the official military documents, this appeared to be a personal letter, handwritten on ordinary paper. It was dated August 15, 1945, the day Japan announced its surrender. The letter was from Colonel Robert Hargrove to his brother William. Hargrove, who, according to the letterhead, had been president of First National Bank of Millfield in 1945. "Dear Bill," it began. "With the Emperor's announcement today, Operation Downfall is officially canceled. Thank God, the invasion plans I've entrusted to your vault will never be executed. Millions who would have died will now live, though few will ever know how close we came to such terrible losses." The letter continued, "As discussed, these documents must remain sealed. The projected casualties are so staggering that making them public now would only fuel debate about our use of the new weapon. History must judge that decision without the emotion these numbers would provoke. Perhaps in 50 years, when passions have cooled, the truth can emerge. Until then, I trust your vault and your discretion." Olivia sat back, overwhelmed by the implications. Colonel Hargrove had deliberately preserved these documents against official policy, hiding them in his brother's bank vault to protect them from destruction, creating a time capsule of one of history's most momentous decisions. And somehow they had remained sealed away, forgotten after William Hargrove's death, undisturbed during the bank's transition to Millfield Savings and Trust, until Walter Griffin had apparently discovered them in the 1980s. The question that burned in Olivia's mind: what had Griffin done with this knowledge, and why had it led to his downfall? As if in answer, she found another handwritten note, this one in different handwriting. Dated March 14, 1989, the day before the bank collapsed. The truth has value. If they won't pay for silence, others will pay for disclosure. Tomorrow I'll be gone, but history will finally know the real cost of victory. The pieces began to fall into place. Griffin had discovered these classified documents and apparently attempted to profit from them, perhaps blackmailing government officials or planning to sell them to foreign entities or private collectors. But something had gone wrong. And now, decades later, someone else knew or suspected what the vault contained. Someone represented by Lawrence Reed and his convenient development company. Olivia's protective instinct, both for the historical artifacts and for her unborn child, surged. Within her, these documents represented a crucial missing piece of American history. They didn't belong hidden away in private collections or suppressed by government agencies embarrassed by decades-old decisions. They belonged to history itself, to the public record, to the families of those who would have fought and died had. The invasion proceeded. As she carefully returned the documents to their container, Olivia heard a sound that made her blood run cold. The main door of the bank opening. Heavy footsteps echoed through the lobby, approaching the vault. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Olivia froze, her mind racing. It was nearly midnight. No legitimate visitor would arrive unannounced. Quickly, she closed the metal document case and looked for a place to hide it. The vault had a small floor safe embedded in one corner, likely used for the most valuable items when the bank was operational. She carefully placed the case inside, closed it, then moved to the vault entrance. Through the partially open vault door, she could see two men in the main lobby. One was Lawrence Reed, his expensive suit now replaced with dark practical clothing. The other was a stranger, older, military-bearing, expression grim. "I'm telling you, General, someone's opened the vault," Reed was saying. "The security firm monitoring the building registered movement in this section an hour ago." "Then where are the documents?" the older man demanded. "You assured me they'd be here, undisturbed." "If they've been compromised, no one knows what they are," Reed insisted. "Even if this woman found them, she wouldn't understand their significance." Olivia's heart hammered in her chest. They knew exactly what the vault contained and had been monitoring the building, waiting for someone to solve the puzzle they couldn't. Now they wanted to ensure whatever was found remained secret. Making a split-second decision, Olivia quietly closed the vault door from inside, turning the interior handle to engage the locking mechanism. The solid click echoed in the confined space. Outside, she heard Reed's startled exclamation. "The vault, it's closing." Footsteps rushed toward the vault, but too late. The massive door was sealed, with Olivia safely inside and the documents protected. But she had also locked herself in pregnant, alone, with limited air and no communication with the outside world. The men outside began working the combination dial frantically. Olivia could hear their muffled voices. "We need the combination," the general barked. "We've tried every logical sequence," Reed replied. "That's why we needed her to open it first. Call the team. Get cutting equipment here now." Olivia assessed her situation. The vault, designed to be secure, had no internal release mechanism. However, as a historical conservator, she knew that high-security vaults of this era were typically equipped with emergency air supplies, small tubes built into the walls to prevent trapped employees from suffocating. Sure enough, a careful examination revealed two small air vents near the ceiling, barely visible in the dim emergency lighting that had activated when the door closed. She would have oxygen, but for how long? Her phone showed no signal inside the vault's thick walls. However, it did have one crucial feature: a voice recorder. If the worst happened, she could at least document her discovery. "My name is Dr. Olivia Chen," she began, speaking clearly into the phone. "I am currently locked inside the vault of the former Millfield Savings and Trust. Today, April 7th, 2025, I discovered classified military documents relating to Operation Coronet, the planned 1946 invasion of Japan. These documents appear authentic and contain information never released to the public, including casualty projections far exceeding official estimates." She continued, detailing everything she had found, reading key sections from the documents for the record. If nothing else, the truth would survive. Outside, she could hear machinery arriving, voices conferring about how to break into the vault without damaging its contents. Olivia knew such efforts would take hours, if not days. Modern vault cutting techniques were specifically designed to be slow and noisy to deter thieves. As the night progressed, Olivia continued documenting the contents of the vault, photographing key documents with her phone. Beyond the Operation Coronet materials, she discovered other historical treasures ledgers showing the bank's operations during the Depression, photographs of the building's construction, and personal effects of previous bank managers. In one dusty corner, she found something unexpected, a small shortwave radio, vintage 1940s, apparently left by the military personnel who had used the vault. On impulse, she examined it, using the flashlight on her phone. To her surprise, the radio appeared remarkably preserved, protected from moisture and corrosion inside the climate-controlled vault. Olivia's father, an electrical engineer, had collected and restored vintage radios. She had spent countless childhood hours learning to repair them, a hobby that had initially sparked her interest in historical preservation. This model was familiar, a military-grade communications unit designed for reliability. Working methodically, she checked the components, finding them intact. The battery was long dead, of course, but the radio had a hand-cranked generator specifically designed for emergency use. With careful, steady cranking, the radio hummed to life, its tubes warming after decades of silence. Tuning carefully through frequencies, Olivia searched for any signal strong enough to penetrate the vault's walls. Most bands produced only static, but one frequency, an emergency channel still used by modern first responders, carried voices clearly enough to be understood. With the microphone in hand, Olivia broadcast a distress call. "This is Dr. Olivia Chen, trapped inside the vault of Millfield Savings and Trust. I need urgent assistance from law enforcement." She repeated the message several times before the radio's aging components began to falter. Outside, the cutting operation continued, the sound of high-powered drills penetrating the vault's walls. Olivia could tell from the changing sounds that they were making progress, perhaps only hours from breaking through. As dawn approached, her phone battery dwindling, Olivia made a final recording. "I believe the men attempting to access this vault represent interests that wish to keep these documents secret, even 75 years after the war's end. But history deserves the truth. The families of those who would have fought and died in Operation Coronet deserve to know how close their fathers and grandfathers came to being sacrificed, and how many lives were ultimately saved by Japan's surrender." She paused, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "If I don't survive this, I want my child to know that their mother stood for historical truth, even when powerful forces sought to conceal it." Just as the recording ended, Olivia heard new sounds outside, sirens, authoritative voices, the cutting operation abruptly ceasing. Then, unexpectedly, the vault mechanism began to turn. Someone was opening it correctly, using the combination. The massive door swung open to reveal not Reed and his military companion, but Howard Finch, accompanied by Sheriff Carolyn Martinez and several deputies. "Thank God," Howard exclaimed, rushing forward to help Olivia. "When I heard someone had broken into the bank, I feared the worst." Sheriff Martinez guided Olivia to a chair in the lobby. Mr. Finch here was monitoring the emergency frequency on his ham radio when he caught your distress call. Good thing, too, we found 2 men attempting an unauthorized entry with military-grade cutting equipment. They're in custody now. They're after what's in the vault, Olivia explained, quickly summarizing her discovery. Historical documents that someone wants to keep buried. The sheriff's expression grew serious. If these are classified military documents, this becomes a federal matter. I'll need to contact appropriate authorities. Not the military, Olivia said firmly. One of the men called the other, General. They represent whoever has kept these documents suppressed for decades. We need independent historical authorities, archivists who will preserve the truth, not hide it. Howard, who had been listening intently, spoke up. My nephew works for the National Archives in Washington. He specializes in declassifying historical military documents. If anyone would know the proper protocols, it's him. As morning fully dawned, Millfield Savings and Trust became the center of an unprecedented historical discovery. Howard's nephew, Dr. Jason Finch from the National Archives, arrived by afternoon, bringing a team of document preservation specialists. The FBI sent agents to interview the intruders and investigate the apparent monitoring operation that had targeted the bank. The documents, authenticated by experts, proved to be exactly what Olivia had surmised, the most complete surviving record of Operation Coronet, including casualty projections that had been deliberately kept from the public due to their shocking scale. These projections would have completely changed the post-war debate about using atomic weapons, Dr. Finch explained as they carefully cataloged the materials. They suggest the invasion would have cost millions of lives on both sides, far more than the official estimates. The FBI investigation revealed an even more complex story. The general was retired General Andrew Hargrove, grandson of Colonel Robert Hargrove, who had hidden the documents in 1945. For decades, the Hargrove family had monitored the bank from afar, ensuring the documents remained sealed, believing they were honoring Colonel Hargrove's wish to protect the wartime decision-makers from criticism. When Walter Griffin discovered the documents in 1989, he had indeed attempted to profit from them, not through blackmail, but by selling them to a Japanese business consortium interested in proving that America had exaggerated the potential casualties to justify the atomic bombings. Before the sale could occur, General Hargrove's father had intervened, recovering the documents but failing to capture Griffin, who escaped with the bank's funds. They simply returned the documents to the vault, changed the combination, and continued monitoring the building, the FBI agent explained to Olivia. When you purchased it, their surveillance system alerted them that someone new had access. In the days that followed, as Olivia recovered from her ordeal, the story of her discovery captured national attention. Historians hailed the documents as the most significant World War II find in decades. The National Archives announced plans for a special exhibition, with the documents finally available for public viewing after 75 years of secrecy. For Olivia, the aftermath brought unexpected opportunities. The Boston Metropolitan Historical Society, embarrassed by their previous treatment of her, and eager to associate themselves with her discovery, offered her a prestigious position as a special collections curator with flexible hours and childcare accommodations. But Millfield had become home in ways she hadn't anticipated. The community had rallied around her, with Howard Finch leading local efforts to support the pregnant woman who had brought their town's forgotten history to light. The bank building itself, now recognized for its historical significance, qualified for preservation grants that would fund its restoration. 2 weeks after her discovery, Olivia sat in what had once been the bank manager's office, now transformed into her living room, reviewing proposals from publishers interested in her first-hand account of the discovery. Howard had stopped by with homemade casseroles and news from town. Eastern Heritage Development has withdrawn all their offers on Millfield properties, he reported with satisfaction. Amazing how quickly they lost interest once their real purpose was exposed. Olivia smiled, her hand resting on her belly. I'm just grateful everything worked out. For a while there, locked in that vault, you showed remarkable courage, Howard said. Colonel Hargrove would have approved, I think. He wanted the truth preserved, even if he believed the time wasn't right to reveal it. The baby kicked vigorously, as if in agreement. Olivia laughed. I think this little one is going to be a historian too. Already appreciates a good historical discovery. The following morning, as sunlight streamed through newly cleaned windows, Olivia stood in the vault, now properly secured, but regularly open for the ongoing cataloging work. The space that had once held secrets capable of rewriting history now represented something different, a testament to the power of preservation, the importance of historical truth, and one woman's determination to protect both. The metal document case that had contained Operation Coronet's plans now sat empty, its contents carefully transferred to proper archival storage for the journey to Washington. But the vault itself remained full of other historical treasures, the everyday records of a small-town bank, now recognized as valuable windows into American economic history. As Olivia prepared for the National Archives team's final visit, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, pregnant and abandoned, her career derailed, she had seemed to be at her lowest point. Now she stood at the center of a historical discovery that would educate generations to come, surrounded by a supportive community with new purpose and direction. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. Olivia placed both hands on her belly. Some discoveries change everything, she whispered. And the most important ones are yet to come. From the doorway, Howard watched with a grandfatherly smile. The team from Washington just arrived, ready to show them what else we've found. Olivia nodded, stepping out of the vault that had changed her life. History doesn't belong locked away, she said. It belongs to all of us, especially the next generation. Outside, spring sunshine bathed the granite facade of Millfield Savings and Trust. No longer abandoned, no longer forgotten, its secrets finally revealed to a world ready to learn from them. And inside, a new chapter was beginning, not just for the building and its historical treasures, but for the woman who had given them both a second chance at fulfilling their purpose. The vault that had once protected America's most sobering wartime secrets now stood as a symbol of preservation and revelation, a testament to the value of confronting history honestly, no matter how difficult the truth might be. For Olivia Chen, that truth had become both her legacy and her future, a foundation upon which to build a life of purpose for herself and her child. The next morning, dawn broke over Millfield with a kaleidoscope of pink and gold that seemed to herald new beginnings. Olivia woke early, her mind racing with questions about the documents she had discovered. The enormity of what lay hidden in her vault was still sinking in operational plans that might have changed the course of history, casualty projections that could transform our understanding of one of the most controversial decisions ever made. As she made her morning tea, a sharp knock at the door startled her. Through the peephole, she saw Sheriff Martinez standing on the steps, her expression grave. "Miss Chen, we need to talk," the sheriff said as Olivia opened the door. "The men we arrested last night, they're gone." "Gone? How is that possible?" Olivia instinctively placed a protective hand over her belly. Sheriff Martinez looked uncomfortable. 2 federal agents arrived at the station around 3 a.m. with transfer papers. Everything looked legitimate. By the time we discovered the papers were forged, they had a 4-hour head start. The implications were chilling. Someone with enough influence to forge federal credentials had helped Reed and the so-called general escape custody. Someone who desperately wanted to reclaim or suppress what Olivia had found. "I've stationed a deputy outside your building," Martinez continued, "and I've contacted the FBI field office in Boston. They're sending agents, but it will take several hours. The documents need protection, Olivia said. If they're what? I believe they are. They're irreplaceable historical artifacts, the sheriff nodded. My department doesn't have the resources to secure them properly. Until federal authorities arrive, they're vulnerable, and so are you. After the sheriff left, Olivia moved quickly. Using her conservation training, she photographed each document in the Operation Coronet file, capturing every page, every map, every signature. Digital preservation wasn't ideal, but it ensured the information wouldn't be lost if the originals were taken. As she worked, Howard arrived with breakfast and concern written across his face. I heard about the escape. Sheriff's got the whole department looking for them. They won't be in Millfield, Olivia said, carefully photographing a map showing planned landing zones on Japan's coastline. They'll be regrouping, planning their next move. Howard watched her work with admiration. You're remarkably calm for someone who spent the night locked in a vault and is now being targeted by government conspirators. Olivia smiled despite the tension. My dissertation advisor used to say crisis reveals character. I spent years learning how to handle priceless historical artifacts with steady hands. This isn't so different. She paused, looking up from her work. Except for the armed men who want to steal them, of course. By mid-morning, she had documented the entire collection and encrypted the files, sending copies to her personal email and cloud storage. If anything happened to the originals, at least the historical record would survive. Outside, rain began to fall, drumming against the bank's windows. The weather matched Olivia's darkening thoughts. Who exactly was she up against? A retired general and a corporate front man suggested resources and connections far beyond what she could counter. Her phone rang an unknown number with a Washington, D.C. area code. Dr. Chen? This is Dr. Jason Finch from the National Archives. My Uncle Howard suggested I call you directly. The voice was professional but friendly. He says you've made quite a discovery. Olivia explained what she had found, careful not to reveal too many specifics over an unsecured line. The documents appear to be original operational plans for Operation Coronet, including casualty projections that substantially exceed publicly acknowledged figures. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. If authentic, that would be significant, especially the casualty projections. Those have been a historical controversy for decades. They're authentic, Olivia assured him. I've verified watermarks, paper composition, typewriter impressions, all consistent with 1945 War Department documents, and they bear original signatures, including MacArthur's. I can be in Millfield by tomorrow morning, Dr. Finch said. In the meantime, secure the documents as best you can. Don't discuss them with anyone else, especially not military or intelligence personnel. The declassification status of Operation Downfall materials is complicated. After ending the call, Olivia felt marginally better. The National Archives would provide legitimate expertise and protection for the documents. But tomorrow morning seemed very far away. Her contemplation was interrupted by the sound of a vehicle pulling up outside. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw a black SUV with government plates. Two men in suits emerged, heading toward the bank's entrance. Instinctively, Olivia moved to the vault, where the documents were still spread across a table. Her gut told her something wasn't right. The FBI wouldn't arrive so quickly, and they would have coordinated with Sheriff Martinez. Making a split-second decision, she gathered the Operation Coronet materials, returned them to their metal case, and placed it inside the floor safe in the corner of the vault. Then she partially closed the vault door, leaving it open just enough to hear what happened in the main lobby. The bank's front door opened. Heavy footsteps entered. FBI, a deep voice announced. Dr. Chen? We're here about the documents. Olivia remained silent. Through the narrow opening, She could see two men in dark suits moving through the lobby, their stances more military than law enforcement. "Check upstairs," one directed. "I'll secure the vault." As footsteps ascended to her apartment, the second man approached the vault, his hand inside his jacket. When he withdrew it, he held not an FBI badge, but a pistol with a silencer attached. Olivia's breath caught. These weren't federal agents. They were here to seize the documents and eliminate witnesses. With trembling hands, she pulled the vault door completely closed, turning the interior handle to engage all locking bolts. For the second time in 24 hours, she had locked herself inside the vault, but this time, the threat outside was unquestionably deadly. Through the thick door, she heard muffled cursing, then the sound of fists pounding on steel. "Open this door now," the man shouted, his false FBI persona abandoned. "We know you're in there." Olivia's mind raced. The vault would protect her temporarily, but she was trapped. Her phone showed no signal. The vault's walls were too thick. The shortwave radio she had used last night lay disassembled, its components being cleaned after decades of disuse. Think historically, she told herself. What would the bank staff have done if accidentally locked inside? The answer came as she examined the ceiling. Most bank vaults of this era had emergency protocols, including communication systems. Sure enough, in one corner, she found a speaking tube, an old-fashioned intercom system that would connect to the bank manager's office. It was primitive but required no electricity, just a clear passage for sound waves. Praying it still functioned. Olivia removed the cap and spoke clearly into the tube. "Help. This is Olivia Chen at the old bank building. Armed men posing as FBI agents are trying to break into the vault. Please call Sheriff Martinez immediately." Whether anyone would hear her message was uncertain, but it was her only hope. Outside, the pounding had stopped, replaced by hushed conversation. They were planning their next move. Minutes stretched into an hour. Olivia tried the speaking tube periodically, repeating her plea for help. The men outside attempted various approaches to the vault, testing the combination dial, examining the hinges, discussing what sounded like drilling equipment. "We don't have time for a full breach," one said, voice barely audible through the thick door. "The actual feds will be here soon. We need to extract and disappear." "The general won't accept failure," the other replied. "Those documents cannot reach the public." Their desperation confirmed what Olivia had suspected. These weren't rogue actors or thieves. They represented powerful interests determined to keep Operation Coronet's true casualty projections buried. But why? After 75 years, what difference would the truth make? As she pondered this question, a new sound reached her sirens, approaching rapidly. Had someone heard her call for help, or was this coincidence? The men outside heard it too. Their footsteps retreated quickly, followed by the slam of the bank's front door. Through the vault's small window designed to allow bank staff to check. If the time lock had expired, Olivia glimpsed the black SUV speeding away just as police cruisers arrived. Cautiously, she opened the vault door. Sheriff Martinez rushed in, weapon drawn, followed by Howard and several deputies. "Are you hurt?" Martinez asked, quickly scanning the bank for threats. "I'm fine," Olivia assured her. "They were after the documents, not me." Howard looked pale with worry. "Thank God Mrs. Peterson heard you. She was cleaning the dentist's office upstairs when your voice came through an old pipe in the wall. She thought she was hearing a ghost until you mentioned the sheriff by name." The impromptu rescue reminded Olivia how interconnected small towns remained, even in the digital age. Modern buildings might have security systems and panic buttons, but sometimes century-old speaking tubes and attentive neighbors were just as effective. "We need to move you to a secure location," Sheriff Martinez said. "These people won't stop coming." Olivia shook her head. "I can't leave the documents unprotected, and they can't be moved without proper archival handling. They're too fragile." Then we create a defensive perimeter here, Martinez decided. I've called in every available deputy. The state police are sending troopers, and the real FBI is en route from Boston. As law enforcement transformed the bank into a makeshift fortress, Olivia returned to the vault to continue documenting the historical treasures it contained. Beyond the Operation Coronet materials, she had discovered other significant items, including journals kept by William Hargrove during the war years, detailing his perspective on the military's use of his vault. One entry, dated June 1945, proved particularly illuminating. Colonel Finch brought new casualty projections today. The numbers are staggering beyond anything the public has been told. When I asked why such estimates were being kept secret, he explained that morale would collapse if Americans knew the true cost of invading the Japanese homeland. Some truths, he said, are too brutal for wartime consumption. This passage suggested the suppression of accurate casualty projections had begun during the war itself, not as a post-war justification for using atomic weapons, but as a morale-preserving measure while the invasion was still being planned. Further entries chronicled William Hargrove's moral struggle with keeping such significant information secret, even after the war ended. Robert believes these documents should emerge eventually when they can be viewed with historical perspective, rather than raw emotion. I'm not convinced such a time will ever come. Some wounds never fully heal. As Olivia carefully transcribed these insights, she felt a profound connection to William Hargrove, another civilian unexpectedly entrusted with history's secrets, forced to make difficult choices about truth and its consequences. By evening, Millfield's main street resembled an armed camp. Police cruisers blockaded approaches to the bank. Officers with shotguns stood guard at all entrances. The local news had picked up the story, reporting only that historical documents of national significance had been discovered in the old bank vault. Inside, Olivia briefed the first FBI agents to arrive, career professionals who seemed genuinely stunned by what she had found. These should have been in the National Archives decades ago, the lead agent, Special Agent Diana Wong, remarked as she examined the operational maps for Operation Coronet. The fact that they were hidden here, then actively suppressed when discovered, that suggests something beyond standard classification procedures. The casualty projections, Olivia pointed to the relevant documents. They estimate over 1 million American casualties for the full Operation downfall, with Japanese losses potentially exceeding 10 million when civilian deaths are included. That's far beyond what officials publicly acknowledged, even decades later. Agent Wong nodded grimly. Numbers like these would have transformed the debate about using atomic weapons. Instead of being portrayed as a terrible but necessary choice, the bombings could be seen as having saved millions of lives on both sides. She looked up from the documents, which would explain why certain interests might want these projections to remain buried. They undermine decades of criticism about America's decision. The conversation was interrupted when Howard burst in, his normally cheerful face tense. With worry. Just heard from my nephew at the National Archives. The man who arranged his sudden reassignment this morning was General Andrew Hargrove, the same man who was here last night. Hargrove is blocking official archive involvement? Agent Wong asked sharply. Not just blocking, he's actively interfering. Jason says Hargrove has significant influence in military historical circles. He's been involved in decisions about World War II document declassification for years. This revelation completed the picture. General Hargrove wasn't just protecting his grandfather's decision to hide the documents, he was continuing a multi-generational effort to control the historical narrative about Operation Downfall and, by extension, the decision to use atomic weapons. It's not about national security, Olivia realized. It's about controlling how history remembers one of America's most controversial decisions. As night fell, the bank took on the atmosphere of a command center. FBI agents coordinated with local law enforcement. Calls went back and forth to Washington. A digital security expert worked to trace the fake FBI credentials used by the morning's intruders. Through it all, Olivia continued her work, methodically documenting each item from the vault. Her pregnancy made the long hours physically taxing. But the historian in her recognized the rare privilege of being the first to handle these long-hidden materials, primary sources that would reshape our understanding of a pivotal historical moment. Around midnight, as she took a brief rest in what had been the bank manager's office, Agent Wong joined her with fresh coffee and a concerned expression. "Dr. Chen, there's something you should know. We've identified one of the men who posed as FBI agents this morning, former Special Forces, now working private security. His most recent employer was the Hargrove Foundation. The general has his own foundation?" Wong nodded. "Established by his father in the 1970s. Officially, it funds military historical research and veteran support programs. Unofficially, our financial analysts believe it's been used to monitor and occasionally acquire World War II documents that conflict with established narratives about the Pacific War." This explained the resources behind the efforts to recover the documents, not just a retired general's personal mission, but an institutionalized, well-funded operation that had worked for decades to shape historical memory. "We're dealing with people who believe they're protecting America's historical legacy," Wong continued. "That makes them particularly dangerous. They see themselves as patriots, not obstructionists." Olivia understood the implication. "They won't stop coming for these documents." "No, they won't. Which is why we're implementing a new security plan. At dawn, a National Archives team with proper clearances will arrive to take custody of everything you found. They'll be accompanied by an armed federal escort." Until then, a tremendous crash interrupted her, followed by the sound of breaking glass and shouting from the street. Agent Wong's radio crackled to life with urgent voices, reporting a vehicle had broken through the police barricade and smashed into the bank's side entrance. "They're here," Wong said, drawing her weapon. "Stay in the vault." Olivia hurried back to the secure room as chaos erupted throughout the building. Gunshots echoed from the main floor, short, controlled bursts rather than wild firing, suggesting trained attackers. Orders were shouted, feet pounded on marble floors, and the acrid smell of smoke drifted through the air. Inside the vault, Olivia worked frantically, gathering the most critical documents and securing them in the floor safe. If the attackers breached the vault, they would find empty shelves, the historical treasures hidden beneath their feet. The sounds of conflict grew closer. Through the vault's small window, Olivia glimpsed armed men in tactical gear moving through the lobby, engaging in firefights with police and FBI agents who had taken defensive positions behind marble columns and teller counters. This was no longer about historical documents. It had escalated to armed assault on federal agents. The desperation behind such a brazen attack underscored the stakes. General Hargrove and his associates weren't just trying to protect reputations or control narratives. They feared a fundamental reassessment of decisions that had shaped the modern world. As smoke filled the lobby, obscuring her view, Olivia heard a new sound: helicopter rotors beating the air above the bank. Reinforcements had arrived, though for which side remained unclear. Then came a sound that made her blood run cold, the distinct click of the vault's combination lock being turned. Someone knew the correct sequence. The massive door began to swing open. Olivia braced herself, uncertain whether friend or foe would appear. To her immense relief, it was Agent Wong. Though the FBI agent's face was smudged with soot and her suit torn at the shoulder. "We need to move now," Wong said urgently. "Roof extraction. Federal tactical team just arrived by helicopter. The documents. Bring what you can carry safely. The rest will have to wait." Olivia quickly gathered the most significant items: the casualty projections, MacArthur's signed orders, William Hargrove's journals and placed them in an archival document case Wang had brought. Together, they moved through the chaos of the bank toward a service stairwell that led to the roof. As they climbed, Olivia asked the question that had been troubling her since the attack began. How did they get the vault combination? Wang's expression darkened. We have a bigger problem. The assault team knew our defensive positions, response protocols, everything. They're being directed by someone with access to our operational plans. A leak within the FBI? Or higher? The only people who received our full operational briefing were the FBI field office, local law enforcement, and... Wang hesitated. And who? Olivia pressed. The Department of Defense. Standard procedure for cases involving classified military documents. The implication was clear. General Hargrove's influence extended into current military or intelligence circles, giving him access to information that should have been securely contained. They reached the roof as the helicopter touched down, its rotors whipping rain and debris across the tar paper surface. Federal agents in tactical gear provided covering fire as Wang guided Olivia toward the aircraft. As they approached, Olivia noticed the helicopter's markings, not FBI, but military. A cold feeling spread through her chest. Agent Wang, wait! Before she could complete her warning, two soldiers emerged from the helicopter. One raised a hand in greeting, but Wang's expression had already shifted from relief to alarm. Her hand moved toward her weapon. Federal agent, identify yourselves. She shouted over the rotor noise. Instead of responding, the soldiers raised their weapons. Wang shoved Olivia behind an air conditioning unit just as gunfire erupted across the rooftop. It's a trap, Wang gasped, drawing her sidearm. They're not our extraction team. Pinned down under fire, with no way to call for help, Olivia felt the full weight of what they were facing, not just hired security or private military contractors, but potentially active-duty personnel following General Hargrove's orders instead of their lawful chain of command. The stairwell is our only option, Wang said, checking her ammunition. When I provide covering fire, run for it. Don't stop. For anything. Olivia clutched the document case to her chest, its contents potentially worth dying for, not for their monetary value, but for their historical significance, for the truth they represented about decisions that had shaped the modern world. Wang counted down silently, then rose and fired a precise series of shots that forced the soldiers to take cover. Now, she shouted. During her shift, Olivia found herself drawn again and again to William Hargrove's journal entries, particularly those written in the weeks after Japan's surrender. August 20th, 1945, one entry read, Robert visited today, still shaken by the cancellation of Olympic and Coronet. The invasion plans that consumed our lives for months are now historical footnotes, rendered unnecessary by a weapon few of us could comprehend. We were prepared to sacrifice a generation, he told me. Now we must live with knowing what we were willing to do, while never being able to prove it was necessary. I suggested the projected casualties should be made public. Surely they would justify the decision to use the atomic bombs. But Robert believed such disclosure would only deepen the psychological wounds. The public knows we dropped the bombs, he said. They don't need to know how many of their sons we were prepared to sacrifice as the alternative. These words, written when the wounds of war were still fresh, revealed the complex moral calculus behind the decision to suppress the true projections. It hadn't been merely about protecting reputations or controlling narratives. It had begun as a genuine belief that some truths were too painful for a nation still grieving its war dead. But that decision, made in 1945, had rippled forward through the decades, eventually twisting into something darker: armed men attacking federal agents, a pregnant historian fleeing for her life, the truth still fighting to emerge 75 years after the war's end. The fire had burned down to embers when a sound outside snapped Olivia to full alertness, the crack of a branch breaking under weight. She quickly extinguished the lantern and moved to wake Howard, placing a warning finger to her lips. Together, they listened as footsteps circled the cabin, too deliberate to be wildlife. Howard motioned toward the bedroom with the escape tunnel, but Olivia hesitated. Running would mean abandoning the documents, leaving them vulnerable to destruction or disappearance back into classified obscurity. Making a swift decision, she gathered the most critical papers and stuffed them inside her jacket. The rest she returned to the document case, which Howard took. Together they crept into the bedroom just as the cabin's front door handle began to turn. Howard pulled up the trapdoor hidden under a small rug, revealing a narrow passage dug into the earth. "Ladies first," he whispered, helping Olivia lower herself into the darkness. The tunnel was cramped and earthy, barely high enough to crawl through. For a pregnant woman, it was particularly challenging, but fear provided powerful motivation. Behind her, Howard pulled the trapdoor closed just as they heard the cabin door burst open. They crawled in silence, moving as quickly as possible through the suffocating passage. Olivia's knees and hands grew raw from the rough earth, but she pressed on, one hand protectively covering her belly as she awkwardly maintained her forward motion. After what seemed an eternity, the tunnel angled upward. Howard tapped her ankle and whispered, "Exit's just ahead. Let me check first." He crawled past her and cautiously pushed open a camouflaged hatch. After surveying the area, he helped Olivia climb out into the cool night air. They had emerged in a small ravine, just as Martinez had described, the cabin no longer visible through the dense forest. "The marked log should be nearby," Howard whispered, scanning the ground. "3 notches," the sheriff said. They found it quickly, a massive fallen pine with 3 distinct axe cuts in its side. Inside a hollowed section, protected by waterproof wrapping, they discovered a backpack containing water, energy bars, a first aid kit, a compass, and most importantly, a loaded revolver. "Sheriff Martinez thinks of everything," Howard remarked, checking the weapon. "Though I haven't fired a gun since my Army days." A shout from the direction of the cabin indicated their absence had been discovered. Flashlight beams began to sweep the surrounding forest. "Which way?" Olivia asked, clutching the documents inside her jacket. Howard consulted the compass. "East takes us deeper into the forest, more hiding places, but also more difficult terrain. West leads back toward town, eventually easier walking, but more chance of being spotted." Olivia considered their options. "East, we need to stay hidden until Martinez returns, or we can contact help." They moved as quietly as possible through the underbrush, Howard leading the way while Olivia followed, one hand on his shoulder for guidance in the darkness. Night was clear but moonless, making navigation challenging but also providing cover from their pursuers. After an hour of careful progress, with the sounds of pursuit growing fainter behind them, they reached a small stream cutting through the forest floor. "We should follow this," Howard suggested. "Walking in the water will hide our tracks and it eventually leads to the old Miller property, abandoned for years, but still has a standing structure. We could rest there." Olivia's feet were already blistered from her inappropriate footwear, but she nodded agreement. The cold water was painful, but provided some relief for her swollen ankles as they waded downstream, using fallen branches for balance on the slippery stones. The Miller property, when they finally reached it just before dawn, proved to be little more than a collapsed barn and the stone foundation of what had once been a farmhouse. But a portion of the barn remained intact enough to provide shelter and, more importantly, concealment from aerial searches. "Rest," Howard insisted, helping Olivia settle onto a relatively clean patch of straw. "I'll keep watch." Despite her exhaustion, sleep came in fitful bursts. Each time she dozed off, Olivia's dreams filled with images of Agent Wong falling on the rooftop, of documents burning, of her child being born in this abandoned barn, while armed men closed in around them. She woke fully to Howard gently shaking her shoulder. Sunlight streamed through cracks in the barn's walls, indicating she had slept longer than intended. "Someone's coming," Howard whispered, the revolver ready in his hand. "Single person on foot." Moving cautiously. Olivia struggled to her feet, wincing at the pain in her muscles and the persistent ache in her lower back. The documents crinkled inside her jacket as she moved her historical treasure and potential death warrant combined. Howard positioned himself near the barn entrance, weapon raised. Footsteps approached, twigs snapping underfoot. A shadow fell across the opening. "Howard? Dr. Chen? It's Martinez." The relief in Howard's posture was immediate, but he maintained his caution. "Prove it's you, Sheriff." "My great-grandfather built the cabin during the Depression," Martinez's voice replied. "And when you were 18, you got caught skinny dipping in Miller's Pond with Sarah Johnston. Her father nearly shot you." Howard lowered the gun, color rising in his cheeks. "That wasn't necessary, Caroline." The sheriff appeared in the doorway, her uniform disheveled and a bandage visible on her forearm. "Can't be too careful. You two okay?" Olivia nodded, though okay seemed a vast overstatement of their condition. "What's happening in town?" Martinez's expression was grim as she entered the barn. "All hell broke loose after you escaped. The attackers retreated when state police reinforcements arrived, but not before 3 officers were wounded and the bank building was partially burned." "Agent Wong?" Olivia asked, dreading the answer. "Alive but critical. Medevacs to Boston." Martinez paused. "The FBI has officially taken over the investigation, classifying it as domestic terrorism. They're looking for you, the real FBI, that is. And so is everyone else. What about General Hargrove?" "Disappeared." His foundation issued a statement denying any involvement, claiming he was being framed by historical revisionists trying to undermine America's greatest generation. Martinez shook her head in disgust. Meanwhile, someone leaked information about the documents to the media. Every news outlet in the country is running stories about lost World War II invasion plans and hidden casualty projections. This development changed everything. Once the story had entered the public consciousness, the documents could no longer simply disappear. Their existence would be questioned, debated, demanded, whether or not the originals ever resurfaced. "We need to get these to legitimate authorities," Olivia said, touching the papers hidden in her jacket. "Before they're destroyed or discredited," Martinez nodded. "That's why I'm here. The National Archives has sent a secure transport team. They're waiting at the state police barracks in Worcester Neutral Ground, away from potential Hargrove influence. Dr. Jason Finch is with them." Howard looked relieved at the mention of his nephew. "Jason will know how to handle this properly. He spent his career preparing for exactly this kind of discovery." The journey to Worcester took most of the day, following back roads and changing vehicles twice to avoid potential surveillance. During a brief stop at a rural gas station, Olivia caught a glimpse of herself in the bathroom mirror, disheveled, exhausted, her face smudged with dirt from the escape tunnel. But her eyes held a determination that surprised her, a steely resolve. That hadn't been there when she first unlocked the bank's front door just days earlier. The state police barracks was a fortress of activity when they arrived, with multiple agencies coordinating what had clearly become a major federal investigation. Dr. Jason Finch met them in a secure conference room, his resemblance to Howard immediately apparent, though he was decades younger. "Uncle Howard," he embraced the older man before turning to Olivia. "Dr. Chen, I can't express how grateful we are that you protected these materials. What you've discovered will literally rewrite history books." Olivia carefully removed the documents from inside her jacket, smoothing them on the conference table. "They need proper conservation. The handling hasn't been ideal." "We have a preservation team standing by," Jason assured her. These will receive the highest standard of archival care. As document specialists in white gloves began the careful process of examining and properly storing the materials, Jason explained the significance of what had happened. For decades, historians have debated whether the atomic bombings were necessary to end the war without an invasion. Critics have argued Japan was already defeated, that the casualty projections were inflated to justify using the new weapon. He gestured to the documents. These records provide definitive evidence that military planners genuinely believed casualties would be catastrophic, far worse than publicly acknowledged. They weren't exaggerating to justify the bombings. If anything, they were understating the projections to maintain public support for the invasion if it became necessary. But why keep suppressing them for 75 years? Olivia asked. The war generation has largely passed. The decision-makers are gone. Because they fundamentally change our understanding of one of history's most controversial decisions, Jason explained. And some people have built entire careers, ideologies, and family legacies around the existing narrative. Howard, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. Like the Hargroves, and apparently the Finches too. Jason nodded solemnly. Our grandfather never spoke about his war service, but his name appears on several of these documents. He helped create these projections, then helped hide them. The burden of that knowledge must have been enormous. A FBI agent entered the conference room, interrupting their conversation. Dr. Chen, there's a secure call for you from Washington. The director wants to speak with you personally. The next hours passed in a blur of debriefings, formal statements, and arrangements for the document's secure transport to the National Archives. Throughout it all, Olivia maintained her focus on what mattered most, ensuring the historical record was preserved and protected from those who would suppress it for political or personal reasons. By evening, she found herself alone with Howard. In the barracks' small cafeteria, both of them physically and emotionally exhausted but unwilling to rest until they knew the documents were safely en route to Washington. I keep thinking about Agent Wong, Olivia said, absently stirring a cup of tea she was too tired to drink. She risked everything to protect historical truth. I'm not sure I would have had that courage if I'd known what was coming. Howard's weathered face creased in a gentle smile. Courage isn't about knowing what's coming, Dr. Chen. It's about continuing forward even when the path becomes more dangerous than you expected. He glanced toward her swollen belly. Something tells me you understand that principle quite well. Olivia placed a hand on her abdomen, feeling her baby's movements stronger now, as if responding to the past day's adrenaline. I just wanted a place to call home before my child arrived. Instead, I found myself in the middle of a 75-year conspiracy, and uncovered historical truth that generations of powerful interests tried to bury, Howard reminded her. Don't minimize what you've accomplished. Few historians ever make the kind of impact you have, not just documenting history, but actively rescuing it from oblivion. The significance of what had occurred was still sinking in. The documents from Millfield Savings and Trust wouldn't just add a footnote to history books. They would transform our understanding of one of the 20th century's most momentous decisions. The ripple effects would touch countless historical narratives, military doctrines, ethical debates, and personal family legacies. Dr. Jason Finch joined them, his expression relieved. The transport just departed with full federal escort. The documents will be in climate-controlled security at the National Archives by morning. He sat heavily in a chair. And there's more news. General Hargrove has been located trying to board a private flight to Argentina. He's in federal custody. Argentina? Olivia questioned. That seems historically on brand for someone fleeing accountability. Jason finished with grim humor. Sometimes clichés exist for a reason. Preliminary charges against Hargrove included conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and potentially treason, though. Jason cautioned that the legal process would be complex and likely lengthy. The general's foundation was already being investigated for misuse of funds and potential espionage activities related to historical document suppression. What happens now? Olivia asked, feeling the weight of the past days settling onto her shoulders. For the documents, a careful authentication and preservation process, followed by controlled release to qualified researchers. For you, Jason hesitated. That's more complicated. You've made some powerful enemies, but you've also done something of immense historical importance. Howard placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. Whatever comes next, you won't face it alone. As night fell over the state police barracks, Olivia found herself reflecting on the strange journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, abandoned and pregnant, her career derailed, she had seemed to be at her lowest point. Now she stood at the center of what would likely be remembered as one of the most significant historical discoveries of the decade. The bank building she had purchased for $500, seeking only shelter, had instead provided her with purpose. The vault she had opened out of curiosity had contained not just documents, but truth that demanded to be defended, even at great personal risk. Outside the barracks window, stars appeared in the clear spring sky, the same stars that had shone over World War II planners as they calculated casualties and weighed options, the same stars that would shine over her child in a world that now had access to a more complete historical record because of the choices she had made. Some discoveries change history. Some discoveries change the discoverer. The most important ones, Olivia reflected as she finally allowed exhaustion to overtake her, somehow managed to do both. 3 months after the dramatic events in Millfield, Olivia Chen stood in the rotunda of the National Archives in Washington, D.C., her hand resting on her now enormous belly as she surveyed the special exhibition that had drawn record crowds since its opening 2 weeks earlier. Operation Downfall, the invasion that never happened, read the main display, showcasing carefully preserved maps, orders, and casualty projections from the Millfield discovery. Alongside these historical documents, the exhibition included personal stories of soldiers who would have participated in the invasion, Japanese civilians who would have faced it, and the scientists and military leaders involved in the alternative that ultimately ended the war. Quite something, isn't it? Dr. Jason Finch appeared at her side, looking proudly at the exhibition he had curated. We've had over 50,000 visitors already. Historians from around the world are requesting research access. 3 university presses have commissioned books. Olivia nodded, watching visitors move reverently from display to display, their faces reflecting the gravity of what might have been. It's still hard to believe all of this was hidden in that vault for 75 years. History has a way of revealing itself when it's ready, Jason replied. And when the right person comes along to discover it. The months following the Millfield incident had been transformative. After the documents were secured at the National Archives, a comprehensive authentication process had confirmed their legitimacy beyond any doubt. The casualty projections showing potential American losses of over 1 million and Japanese military and civilian casualties, potentially exceeding 10 million, had indeed been created by the actual military planners responsible for Operation Downfall, including Colonel Robert Hargrove and Colonel William Finch. These projections, far exceeding the publicly acknowledged figures, provided compelling evidence that the decision to use atomic weapons had potentially saved millions of lives on both sides. A historical assessment that continued to spark intense academic and ethical debates, but now with crucial primary source documentation. For Olivia personally, the aftermath had brought unexpected opportunities. The scholarly community had recognized her not just for finding the documents, but for risking her life to protect them. Universities and museums had approached her with employment offers. Publishers sought her first-hand account of the discovery and its implications. But most significantly, her actions had prompted a broader examination of how historical narratives are shaped controlled and sometimes suppressed by powerful interests. A conversation now taking place in academic journals, news media, and congressional hearings investigating General Hargrove's decades-long operation to control World War II historical documentation. The Special Senate Committee has requested your testimony again next week, Jason mentioned, guiding her toward a bench as he noticed her discomfort from standing. They're specifically interested in the documents you found regarding the 1945 decision to classify the casualty projections. Olivia eased herself onto the bench, wincing slightly. At 39 weeks pregnant, everything had become uncomfortable. William Hargrove's journals are the key. They show the suppression began as a wartime security measure that gradually evolved into something more problematic, protecting reputations and controlling historical assessment. Jason nodded. The committee is particularly interested in how a private family foundation managed to influence federal document classification for decades. The implications for historical transparency are enormous. A school group entered the rotunda, teenagers with the expected mix of interest and restlessness. Their teacher, a middle-aged woman with passionate gestures, gathered them around the central display. "What you're seeing here," the teacher explained, "is history that was almost lost forever. These documents show us that historical truth isn't always what we've been told, and that sometimes a single person's courage can change our understanding of the past." Olivia smiled as several students glanced her way, clearly recognizing her from the exhibition's introductory video. Her story, the pregnant historian who purchased a bank for $500 and discovered priceless historical documents, had captured public imagination, becoming something of a modern legend. "Speaking of courage," Jason said quietly, "have you heard the latest about Agent Wong?" Olivia's expression softened. "I visited her at the rehabilitation center last week. The doctors say she might regain limited use of her right arm, but her field career is over. The Bureau is creating a special historical document security division for her to lead once she's recovered." Diana Wong had become a personal hero to Olivia, the FBI agent who had taken bullets to protect historical truth. Their shared ordeal had forged a friendship that transcended professional connections. "And the bank building?" Jason asked. "I heard the Restoration Committee secured additional funding." This was perhaps the most unexpected outcome of the Millfield incident. Once the story broke internationally, the abandoned bank building where Olivia had made her discovery had become an object of intense interest. Preservationists, historians, and tourism officials had quickly recognized its potential as both a historical site and economic opportunity for the struggling town. "The structure survived the fire better than expected," Olivia explained. "The main vault and most of the original architecture remained intact. The committee is planning to restore it as a museum dedicated to both the Operation Downfall documents and the broader theme of hidden history." What had begun as Olivia's desperate attempt to find affordable housing had transformed an entire community. Millfield, once fading into obscurity, was experiencing renewed vitality as the town where history was rediscovered. The influx of visitors, researchers, and media had created jobs, revitalized the downtown area, and instilled a new sense of pride and purpose among residents. Sheriff Martinez had been instrumental in this transformation, leveraging her newfound national profile to secure grants and government support for the town's revitalization. Howard Finch, now celebrated as a keeper of local history, led popular walking tours, explaining both the bank's architectural significance and the dramatic events that had unfolded there. As Olivia and Jason continued their tour of the exhibition, they passed a display case containing the small shortwave radio she had used to call for help from inside the vault, now a popular highlight of the exhibition, representing the ingenuity that had helped save both her life and the historical documents. "Did I mention the Smithsonian is interested in creating a traveling version of this exhibition?" Jason said. They want to focus on the human elements, your discovery, Wong's sacrifice, the Hargrove family's multi-generational efforts to control the narrative. History isn't just documents in a vault, Olivia reflected. It's the people who create it, preserve it, discover it, and sometimes try to hide it. Their conversation was interrupted by a familiar voice calling Olivia's name. Turning, she saw Howard Finch approaching, accompanied by Sheriff Martinez and several Millfield residents who had traveled to Washington for the exhibition. "There she is," Howard exclaimed, embracing Olivia carefully, mindful of her condition. "The woman who put Millfield on the map." Martinez smiled warmly. "How are you feeling? You look ready to deliver that baby right here in the National Archives." "Don't tempt fate," Olivia laughed, though her back had indeed been aching suspiciously. "All morning. I still have another week before my due date." The Millfield contingent shared news from home. The bank restoration project was proceeding ahead of schedule. 3 new businesses had opened on Main Street, and a documentary film crew was in town capturing the community's revitalization story. "And guess who purchased the old hardware store?" Howard said with a mischievous grin. "Eastern Heritage Development, Lawrence Reed's company." Turns out they really were legitimate developers, just being manipulated by Hargrove for his own purposes. Now they're investing in Millfield properly, without any hidden agendas. This revelation highlighted how thoroughly the Millfield incident had exposed the complex web of influence and manipulation surrounding the Operation Downfall documents. Reed had been a pawn in Hargrove's game, not the mastermind Olivia had initially suspected. As they toured the exhibition together, Olivia felt a powerful sense of completion. The historical documents had finally fulfilled their purpose, not hidden in a vault as a family secret, but publicly displayed, sparking conversation and deeper understanding about one of history's most consequential decisions. The exhibition's final section addressed the broader implications of the Millfield discovery. A large panel posed thought-provoking questions. What other historical narratives might be incomplete or deliberately shaped? How does control of primary source documents influence our understanding of the past? Who decides which historical truths are too difficult for public consumption? These questions resonated deeply with Olivia, who had witnessed firsthand the lengths to which powerful interests would go to control historical narratives. Her academic training had taught her about historical revisionism and contested interpretations, but the Millfield experience had shown her something more profound, that history itself could be physically concealed, locked away in vaults both literal and metaphorical. "Dr. Chen?" A hesitant voice interrupted her thoughts. A young woman, perhaps 20, stood nearby with an exhibition catalog. "Would you mind signing this? I'm a history major at Georgetown. Your discovery is what we all dream about finding." As Olivia signed the catalog, the student continued. "I'm writing my thesis on how the Millfield documents change our understanding of atomic weapons decision-making. Do you think there are other significant historical documents still hidden away, waiting to be found?" Olivia considered the question carefully. History isn't static, it reveals itself gradually, often when society is ready to confront difficult truths. What happened in Millfield wasn't just about documents being physically hidden. It was about our collective readiness to re-examine comfortable narratives. The student nodded thoughtfully. "So the most important historical discoveries might be the ones that challenge what we think we already know." "Exactly," Olivia smiled. "The past isn't as settled as textbooks might suggest. It's constantly being reinterpreted, rediscovered, and sometimes completely rewritten when new evidence emerges." After the student departed, Howard approached with concern etched on his face. "You're looking uncomfortable, Olivia. Perhaps we should find somewhere for you to rest?" Olivia nodded, suddenly aware of the increasing frequency of the back pain she'd been experiencing. "Actually, I think maybe we should." Her words were cut short as a stronger contraction gripped her, this one unmistakable in its meaning. "I think the baby has decided to make a historical entrance," she said, grabbing Howard's arm for support. "Right here in the National Archives." What followed was a flurry of activity. Sheriff Martinez took command of the situation with practiced authority. Museum security cleared a path. Dr. Jason Finch called for medical assistance while Howard remained steadfastly at Olivia's side, providing the grandfatherly support that had become so important to her over the past months. Of course, this child wouldn't wait for the scheduled delivery date. Olivia laughed between contractions as they helped her to a private office. He or she already has a flair for dramatic timing. Paramedics arrived quickly, confirming what Olivia already knew: labor was progressing too rapidly for transportation to a hospital. Her baby, like the historical documents that had changed her life, seemed determined to emerge in a significant location. "The archives has had many historic moments," Jason joked nervously, "but I believe this will be our first birth." Hours later, as evening fell over Washington, Olivia held her newborn daughter in her arms, marveling at the perfect features of the tiny face looking up at her. The impromptu delivery room, the archives director's private office, had served its purpose admirably, and both mother and child were reported to be in excellent health by the medical team that had arrived in time for the delivery. "A name that connects past and future," Howard agreed, gently touching the baby's tiny hand, "just like her mother does." Jason Finch, who had been speaking with archives officials, returned to the room with an unusual announcement. "The director has a proposal. Given the historic nature of Diana's birth, they'd like to create a special acquisition record. The National Archives officially acknowledges the birth of Diana Willow Chen as the first child born within its walls since its establishment in 1934. Olivia laughed, cradling her daughter closer. Her first historical footnote, and she's only hours old. As night settled over the Capitol, the new mother gazed out the office window at the illuminated monuments of Washington structures built to commemorate history, to give physical form to national memory and shared values. Diana slept peacefully in her arms, unaware of the remarkable circumstances of her birth or the historical discovery that had transformed her mother's life. In the months and years that followed, the story of Millfield Savings and Trust and its hidden vault became a modern legend taught in history classes, featured in documentaries, and eventually dramatized in an award-winning film. The Operation Downfall documents fundamentally altered historical understanding of World War II's conclusion, validating the difficult decision to use atomic weapons while acknowledging its terrible human cost. General Andrew Hargrove's trial revealed the extent of his family's multi-generational effort to control historical narratives, an operation that had involved military intelligence resources, academic influence, and financial power leveraged to shape how history remembered one of America's most controversial decisions. For Olivia Chen, life took directions she could never have anticipated when she spent her last $500 on an abandoned bank building. The museum established in the restored Millfield Savings and Trust became nationally recognized, with Olivia serving as its founding director while raising her daughter in the renovated apartment above once the bank manager's residence. Now, a home filled with books, historical artifacts, and the joyful chaos of childhood. Diana grew up surrounded by history, not just in textbooks and museums, but as a living legacy. She took her first steps in the bank's grand lobby, learned to read from historical markers, and fell asleep to bedtime stories about brave FBI agents, small-town sheriffs, and elderly bank tellers who had helped her mother protect documents of immense historical significance. On Diana's 5th birthday, Olivia took her daughter into the restored vault for the first time, explaining in simple terms the discovery that had changed both their lives. "This is where I found important papers that told us about things that happened long ago," she explained, watching her daughter run curious fingers along the vault's massive door. "Some people wanted to keep them secret, but I believed everyone should know the truth about history. Diana considered this with the serious expression children reserve for information they sense is significant. Was it scary, Mommy? Olivia nodded honestly. Sometimes it was very scary. But doing the right thing often is. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Like when I told you I broke the vase, even though I was scared you'd be mad. Exactly like that, Olivia smiled, marveling at her daughter's ability to connect grand historical principles to her own 5-year-old experiences. Truth matters, even when it's difficult. Maybe especially then. As they left the vault, Diana stopped to look at a photograph on the museum wall, the famous image of Olivia, enormously pregnant, standing before the Operation Downfall exhibition at the National Archives just hours before Diana's birth. "That's you with me in your tummy," Diana said matter-of-factly. "At the important building where I was born." "Yes," Olivia confirmed. "You were born in a place that protects America's most important historical documents. Not many people can say that." Diana considered this, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. "Maybe I'll protect important things too when I grow up." "I think you might," Olivia replied, taking her daughter's hand as they continued their tour of the museum that had once been simply a desperate housing solution for a pregnant woman with nowhere else to go. Outside, Millfield had transformed from a struggling town into a vibrant community centered around its unexpected historical significance. New businesses lined the once empty Main Street. The town square hosted regular historical lectures and community events. Visitors from around the world came to see where Operation Downfall's secrets had been hidden and ultimately revealed. Howard Finch, now in his 90s but still sharp as ever, could often be found giving his popular walking tours, describing both architectural features and the dramatic events of the discovery with equal enthusiasm. Sheriff Martinez had been elected mayor, leveraging her leadership during the crisis into a position where she could guide the town's revitalization. And at the center of it all stood Millfield Savings and Trust, its restored facade gleaming in the sunlight, its vault now open for all to see, a symbol of how hidden history, once revealed, can transform not just our understanding of the past, but the trajectory of the future. For Olivia Chen, the bank had provided far more than shelter or historical discovery. It had given her purpose, community, and a platform from which to advocate for historical transparency. Her academic work on the suppression and revelation of historical narratives had established her as a leading voice in discussions about who controls history and how those controls shape our collective understanding. 10 years to the day after Olivia first turned the key in the bank's front door, a special ceremony was held in the building's grand lobby. The governor presented her with the state's highest civilian honor for her contribution to historical preservation and education. Diana, now a precocious 10-year-old with her mother's curiosity and determination, watched proudly from the front row. Dr. Chun's discovery reminds us that history isn't just what happens, the governor declared. It's what we choose to remember, what we choose to record, what we choose to protect, and sometimes, what we choose to reveal despite powerful interests who would prefer certain truths remain hidden. Accepting the award, Olivia reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with desperation and ended with transformation, not just of her own circumstances, but of historical understanding itself. 10 years ago, I was a pregnant woman with nowhere to go, spending my last money on an abandoned building, she told the assembled crowd. I was looking for shelter, not historical treasures. I was seeking a place to rebuild my life, not documents that would reshape our understanding of a pivotal historical moment. She glanced at Diana, sitting between Howard and Sheriff Martinez, the chosen family they had formed through extraordinary circumstances. What I discovered in that vault was significant not just for what it revealed about the past, but for what it teaches us about the present. History isn't dead and settled, it's dynamic, contested, and sometimes deliberately obscured. The documents I found had been hidden for 75 years, not because they weren't important, but because they were too important, too capable of disrupting established narratives and comfortable assumptions. Looking around at the restored bank that had become both museum and home, Olivia continued, "This building once secured the financial assets of a community. Now it secures something even more valuable: historical truth and the lessons we can draw from it. The most important of those lessons may be that a single person, even one facing desperate circumstances, can change how we understand our collective past and, by extension, how we shape our shared future." As applause filled the grand lobby, Olivia's gaze returned to her daughter, the unexpected gift who had accompanied her on every step of this remarkable journey. Diana's life had begun amid historical discovery, continued through national recognition, and now unfolded in a community transformed by the power of revealed truth. Some inheritances are measured in dollars, others in the courage to seek truth, regardless of consequences. Diana Willow Chen, born in the National Archives and raised in a bank vault turned museum, had received the rarest inheritance of all, a living example of how individual choices can illuminate not just one's own path, but the broader landscape of human understanding. As mother and daughter left the ceremony together, walking hand in hand through the town that their shared journey had transformed, Olivia reflected on how a simple act of desperation, purchasing an abandoned bank with her last $500, had cascaded into consequences neither she nor anyone else could have predicted. Sometimes the most valuable treasures hide in plain sight, waiting for someone with the courage to turn the key, open the vault, and bring hidden truth into the light. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.